What's good, everybody? I'm Justin Miller, owner of Legends of Athletics. We want to discuss in this video acute angles in female athletes, how this affects the athlete, what we can do to solve that problem, and what that problem is doing to us physically as we go through this phase. If you like the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and as always, be legendary. Firstly, let's jump into what is a acute angle. What am I talking about when I talk about acute angles? And I want to make sure I have a graphic for you guys so you can see it, but also I want to describe it for you. So whenever you hear somebody talk about the term acute angle, basically what they're talking about is the angle from the hips to the knees. This is what we describe and discuss when we talk about the center of gravity dropping for female athletes. The center of gravity goes from the hips and is more so loaded at the knees. But these are things that we can work on and improve as we go through our athletic journey from pre-adolescence to adolescence and so forth and so on. So with the acute angle, again, we're describing that juncture between the hips and the knees. Men and male athletes are more so parallel. So when you look at them straight ahead, and even if you looked at them with different metrics to measure, like using a goniometer or whatever you have at your disposal, you will see that men are more so parallel from the hips to the knees with no deviation from the hips to the knees. Some men are, more hippie than others, but for the most part, we're all parallel. With women, especially like going through puberty and after puberty, you will see that deviation from the hips and to the knee area kind of looks somewhat like that, about 10 to 15 degrees. Some maybe a little bit more, some a little bit less. But you will see that deviation from the hips to the knees, and that's what we're discussing when we're talking about acute angles. And so in a nutshell, that's what a acute angle is. So whenever you watch sports such as basketball, I want to use that firstly. You see players and shooters like a Kevin Durant. You see some male shooters who have a valgus knee drop. And so when they drop down to shoot, you'll see the knees kind of come closer together, and then they uncoil and spring up to take that jump shot or make the jump shot. You also see this with women without doing the drop or without dropping and landing into the shooting position and unloading from the shooting position. So you naturally, if you watch a woman's gait pattern or watch women walk, things like that, then you'll naturally see more times than not the knees are staying close together just because of bodily structure and the anatomy of the body. And so this is happening during the jumping and landing phases, but this is putting a lot of stress on the medial and the lateral sides of the knee. Medially, what's happening when I talk about medial, I'm talking about the inner part of the knee. So the knee that's closest to the inside of your body. Medially, what's happening is the knee capsules are opening up and making you more susceptible to an ACL tear, making you more susceptible to tears of the tendons and within that location of your knee. And so those things are happening there. And so that portion of the knee kind of opens up just naturally because it's getting pushed. And so it's decompressing and opening up. Kind of like you see with the elbow whenever you see a baseball player have a UCL injury from constant wear and tear, the elbow opening up, closing here whenever they're throwing a baseball constantly. On the outsides of the knee, what we're seeing is we're seeing a compression of those of the knee or those bones on the lateral part of the knee. So the outside portion of the knee, we're seeing more of a compression there just due to the anatomy again of how it's made. So we have more stress on the meniscus and things of that nature, LCLs and all that are located on the outsides of the knee. So when we're walking and we're doing different activities, even jumping and landing, naturally you just think about this with, not using anything medical, but you think about it, if you're constantly jumping and landing and all that load is coming to the outside of the knee, and the valgus muscles are also trying to keep you up, but they're also being overworked, well, naturally the knee has to give something up over time. And so that's where we're going to see a lot of those knee injuries. We're going to see some osgood slaughters. We're going to see some ACL tears. We're going to see those things of that nature in that capacity just because structurally how things are made. This is the second part to that. Women, more times than not, in general, we're keeping everything general, so I'm not specifying this to any one person, but in general, women are more flat-footed than men. So more women have less of an arch than men do. So with that, great arch support helps this. Great shoes help this as well. But naturally, because the falling of the feet or the lack of an arch, there is nowhere the load is displaced more so again medially on the feet. So you'll see the ankles kind of fall over and things like that on the foot versus having that load balanced out within the feet. And so this again places more stress coming up the chain to the knee. So you have your center of gravity coming down to the knee. And then we have, because weak feet and poor structure in our feet, we have that coming up the chain and again stopping within the knee. And so we have to address that in some capacity. This is where, you see some people talk about VMO exercises and things like that. Yes, you can strengthen the VMO, which is that teardrop muscle that's on the inside portion of the knee. So that's at the medial part of the knee, the medial part of the knee. So we do have that VMO muscle that we can strengthen, but the VMO is already getting overworked just due to structurally how everything is made. This also goes back to the video that I did previously where I talked about being front loaded. So our quads are having to do more work just because of, again, how things are structured. And this is where I think after puberty, where a lot of women fall out of sports and things like that, especially if they're not doing some of the things that we're going to talk about as a solution, because they're not addressing the problem or learning how to deal with and work with the problem. So if we don't want to intentionally tear our ACLs and have knee problems just because we're not addressing them. So what are some things that we can do? The things we can do is strengthen not only the knee, but strengthen those muscles around the knees. So strengthening and improving activation in our glutes from the glute med to the glute max. We want to do that. We also want to get some hamstring involvement. So we have to get the hamstring stronger. We also want to learn how to push through or push over our big toe. A lot of times you see people, even if you go to the gym, one exercise that you can look at, and you will see this time and time again, is most people do calf raises. And when you do calf raises, what do most people do? Most people flex, and instead of rolling up like over their big toe, like here to here, and we'll use my index finger as the big toe. So instead of rolling here to here and going over the big toe, what you see is people roll that way. So they mostly fall over the pinky toe. And so you're not strengthening those muscles in the feet and ankles. You're more so, you're working your calf muscles, but you're working more the outside than that interior head of the calf, because you have more than one head there. And so those are things that we can do, improving our strength just overall in our lower body. It's the first thing that I would do. So don't be afraid to lift weights. Women, you have different hormones, you have different body structure. So I promise you, doing deadlifts and just normal, regular, plain Jane lifts are not going to turn you into a man. That myth has been disproven years and years ago. And so we have to introduce them to lifting, but also make sure that we're getting the muscles activated that we want to activate. Because being so quad dominant, you can't get tricked into thinking that we're working certain muscle groups that we are aiming for, but we're only being tricked by that because the muscle is compensating. And so there's another muscle group taking over, even though the movement looks great. Another muscle group is taking over the movement pattern, so that the correct muscle group that we're aiming to work is not working. So that's the first thing I would do, is strengthening all that lower half. The next thing we would do is work on jumping and landing mechanics. A lot of times when we see injuries, female athletes are more susceptible to non-contact injuries than male athletes. So we have to work on pivoting. We have to work on coming from awkward positions into a full sprint. We have to work on rotating, so creating torque in certain areas, and then how we need to structure our base when it comes to landing mechanics. Going to what I just said, improving your base whenever you land. So not landing with your feet too narrow under you, but also not so wide to where we lose power and ability to coil and uncoil in order to produce power and jump back up. So those are things that we have to do as well. And then lastly, I would say just working on your running and sprinting mechanics. A lot of times we can get deep into this portion, but I'm not going to do that for this video. But we do have to look at where the foot is rotating at the start. We also have to look at how much drive we're getting. We also have to look at what's working and what's not working. You would think most female athletes have great starts because of the quads. The quads are great, powerful muscles that can help you at the start of a race, but then you lack the ability to sustain power or produce more power to be a good sprinter in most cases. Then we have to take into account what sport and the demands of the sport that the athlete is playing in order to appropriately dose sprinting and being mechanically sound in what we're trying to do. And so these are things that we want to address as far as like the Q angle and working around that Q angle and being the best athlete possible to make us comfortable. I do know that there are other factors that you go into, being comfortable with your body. Some things that are changing as far as like your anatomy. You may be a little uncomfortable with that, or you may be a little shameful of that, but that's natural. So you have to just be comfortable in your own skin or get comfortable in your own skin. And so even with that, you can be a great athlete. It just takes time, and don't hesitate to get in the weight room and get strong. A lot of times with our female athletes, we tend to be overly cautious until a point that it hurts the athlete more than helps the athlete. And so many of our female athletes, even in 2025, and I was about to say 2024, I had to remember what year we in, 2025, we still don't introduce them to weights until they are a scholarship athlete at the collegiate level, or most time that's going to be what it is. And I know I'm speaking for here in the South. This is not a research project or anything, but we still have a ton of our girls and ladies and young ladies that get their information naturally so from their parent. And so they are cardio heavy, but the muscle mass is not there to be a great athlete, and the muscle mass and density is not there as a mature athlete getting up to the junior and senior year of high school to truly reduce our chance for injury just because we haven't trained in that capacity or trained that way. And so we want to introduce these things and continue to stay on the path to help all athletes. And these are things that we just want to address. And so if you like the content, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and as always, be legendary.